My name is Mary Pettigrew, and I'm with the Empower Our Future communications team. And we are the folks who put on these Empower Hours. And tonight we are delighted to welcome a longtime Empower Our Future and Citizens Climate Lobby volunteer, Chris Hoffman. Chris is a retired management consultant and counselor with 23 years experience in the utility industry, as well as additional consulting experience in other industries. He's got 5 years experience in mental health counseling. He's also an author. He's got an eco-psychology book, several professional articles, and 3 books of poetry. He devotes most of his time to volunteer work for an equitable and thriving future with a livable climate. Chris has been an active volunteer, as I said, with Empower Our Future, which previously was RenewablesYES. He's been doing that since 2011. And with Citizens Climate Lobby, also known as CCL, since 2013. And for 4 years, Chris was CCL's liaison to Senator Michael Bennet. So again, thanks everybody for getting here.
Okay. Thank you, Mary, and thank you everybody for showing up tonight. I appreciate it. What I want to talk to you about is powering America forward to clean energy. As Mary said, I'm a retired management consultant with some experience in the utility industry. And one of the organizations I work for is Citizens Climate Lobby. And we are in the work of trying to build political will to act on climate. We are a nonpartisan volunteer organization with chapters across the country and around the world. And we're excited that there is now a powerful climate action bill in Congress, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And it works by putting a fee on fossil fuels at the source and then returning 100% of the net revenue to households as a dividend. And there's a carbon border adjustment, and I'll say a little bit more about that. First, it places a fee on coal, oil, and gas, which starts low, $15 per metric ton, and increases by at least $10 per ton per year. The net revenue collected from the carbon fee is allocated in equal shares every month to the American people. And there is a border adjustment. Carbon-intensive goods like steel, glass, and cement that are exported from the United States will receive a refund. And when they're imported, the importing firm will pay a carbon adjustment unless the other country, the country they're being imported from, has an equivalent carbon price. So this adjustment both discourages businesses from relocating to where they can emit more CO2 and encourages other nations to adopt an equivalent price on carbon. So it provides a level playing field for US businesses and incentivizes other countries to impose a carbon price. We have 56 co-sponsors right now, and there are more joining all the time. The co-sponsors from Colorado are Joe Neguse, Ed Perlmutter, and Jason Crow. And there are a lot of benefits to this. The primary ones are it's the fastest way to get to net zero by 2050. It saves lives, puts money in your pocket, and promotes affordable clean energy. It's the single most powerful tool to get us to net zero by 2050. It's not the only thing we need to do, but it is the biggest single thing. It can bring about economy-wide net greenhouse gas emissions of 36 to 38% by 2030, which exceeds our Paris commitments. Here's a graph of the impacts. This is basically the business as usual curve. This is the range of net emissions that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says we need to stay within just to get to the range of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius temperature increase. And here's the glide path from the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. It's a polluters pay policy. Just for reference, this is our Paris commitment. And this is where the Clean Power Plan would have taken us by 2030. So some more of the benefits. It will save lives. Today, there are over 35,000 lives lost each year due to pollution. In the next 50 years, this bill will save over 4.5 million lives thanks to cleaner air. It puts money in your pocket to spend with no restrictions. So the dividend comes back to you as a monthly payment with one share for each adult and a portion of a share for each child. And the average annual dividend for a family of 4 in year 10 is almost $3,000. So fossil fuel energy influenced prices will go up, but most families will come out ahead thanks to the dividend. And here's a really clear illustration of what that looks like. These are income quintiles across the United States. And you can see that, and the blue is the increased, the dark blue is the direct energy cost related to the carbon fee. The light blue is the indirect energy costs. And so the direct energy cost is paying for gasoline and heating oil, electricity, and so on. And the indirect energy costs are the costs energy costs embedded in things that people buy. So the portion of energy in buying a new shirt or a pair of shoes or a frying pan or something like that. And then the gray area is the financial asset costs, and that's the costs to companies that you may own stock in, for example, or have bonds with. And as you can see, most of the financial asset cost accrues to the uppermost income bracket. And then the green is the carbon dividend after taxes. And you can see in the first 3 quintiles, these clearly come out ahead. They get more money back than they pay out. The fourth income is pretty close to being a wash. And it's the big income folks in quintile 5 who pay the most. And those are folks like Bill Gates who fly around in private jets, and they have much higher carbon footprints. And so those who contribute the most emissions bear most of the financial burden for decarbonizing the economy. And to give you a sense of the range here, these are the approximate top of the quintile ranges. So you can see if you fall in those ranges, then that's where that's where your quintile will be. And so this is an inherently progressive policy. It protects the poor and the middle class from undue economic burdens while still preserving individual lifestyle choices, because everybody gets to spend the same amount and everybody gets to spend it the way they want. And it also brings the benefits for affordable clean energy. It levels the playing field for clean energy by correcting a market distortion that currently benefits fossil energy. Because currently emitting CO2, which is costly to society, is free to businesses. It also unleashes market forces and innovation to drive down the prices of clean energy. Because businesses will see, yeah, there's money to be made here and it's predictable. And businesses like that for planning. And it creates jobs. clean energy jobs will be created in the local community. As a matter of fact, an investment in clean energy today will lead to approximately 3 times as many jobs as an investment in fossil fuels. And these are well-paid, stable, local jobs. And it keeps businesses healthy. It's a market-based solution. Businesses prefer a predictable and gradually rising price on carbon over a mass of complicated regulations. Businesses will not lose time or spend extra money trying to understand complicated new regulations and rules and incorporate them into their plans. And it helps build a strong economy. There was a statement from over 3,500 economists from across the political spectrum, including Janet Yellen, that says that the carbon price is the most cost-effective way to lower America's pollution. To match its impact, multiple regulations across economic sectors would be needed, at an additional cost of hundreds of billions of dollars every year to America's economy. Also, regulations could cost us valuable time due to lengthy rulemaking procedures and potential court challenges. And we just don't have time to work through those. Because of all these benefits, businesses are supporting of carbon pricing. There are CEOs, just some examples here, CEOs and representatives of more than 75 US businesses and trade associations, Business Roundtable, Chamber of Commerce, American Petroleum Institute, Electric Power Supply, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which includes organizations like you've probably heard of Apple and Alaska Airlines and Google, and a lot of the big Silicon Valley companies are supportive of carbon pricing. And there are many other supporters, including Environmental Defense Fund, Evangelical Environmental Network, Friends Committees on National Legislation, which is noted for promoting progressive legislation, Trout Unlimited, Episcopal Church, Presbyterian Church, Protect Our Winters, Students for Carbon Dividend, Unitarian Universalist Association, and the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Here's a glance of some of the endorsers of the EICDA, or HR 2307, prominent individuals, businesses, education, faith groups, local governments, news media, nonprofits, and so on. And you can see in the lower right some Colorado individuals, including Andrew Romanoff and our state representatives, Edie Hooton, Karen McCormick, Tracy Burnett. And the granddaddy of climate awareness, James Hansen, is a strong supporter. And many athletes and professionals, particularly in winter sports, are strongly supportive. And many politicians, as you probably know, Sheldon Whitehouse has been a voice for climate action for years and years and years, presenting to the Senate about the importance of climate action. And he talks about the importance of a climate fee and how every American's family stands to benefit from the direct revenue and from a healthier environment and from a stronger, more sustainable economy. So just to recap the benefits, best tool to net zero by 2050, saves lives, puts money in your pocket, and promotes affordable clean energy. So here's some ways to help. You can contact DC and to Representatives Crow, Neguse, and Perlmutter, tell them thank you for co-sponsoring. They really need to hear from us. And to everyone else, ask them to please co-sponsor. For the Senate, for Bennet and Hickenlooper, please ask them to please introduce companion legislation. There has been companion legislation in previous Congresses, but not yet in this Congress, in the Senate. And ask President Biden to include this in his infrastructure plan. Some other ways to help. You can sign up for CCL's monthly calling campaign to receive a monthly reminder to call. And it's really easy. And if you call after hours, you don't even need to talk to a live person. You can leave a message. But what we know, as Mary said, I've been with Citizens Climate Lobby for a number of years, and I've talked directly with many members of Congress, including Senator Bennet. And what we know is that the calls really make a difference. They really want to hear from us. And you can also tell your friends about it. The HR 2307 EICDA. And you can, if you're interested, consider joining CCL. And there's a information session weekly. For more information about the Act, you can go to the Energy Information Act website. And for more information about CCL, the CCL website is there. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attention and be happy to take questions.
I am going to try to see who's raising their hand. Okay, Karen Holweg, why don't we just go ahead and have you unmute, Karen, and ask your question.
Great, thank you. My question, Chris, is the 3 times as many jobs with, was it renewable energy? Or
yeah, do you want the reference?
Tell me a little bit more about that and what the evidence is. What if I'm trying to make that point? What's the source of? How do I convince people that it's real data?
That's a great question. Let me put my screen back up and go back to that slide. This is the reference, and I can put this in the chat. There's an article, Economic Benefits of Investing in Clean Energy, from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And I will put that in the chat.
Can you tell me anything more about it off the top of your head, or?
Well, I'm mostly just the bottom line that it's, let's see, stop share and there. Okay, so I put that in the chat. That's a great question. So mostly I can just tell you the bottom line in it. There's a lot more detail in it, but I don't have it memorized. I have to go back and read it again. But does that answer your question?
Well, if I can find the document, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Do you see it in the chat?
I do.
Okay. You know, I just accessed it online a couple of days ago, so it should be available.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So it looks like, Mary, next we have Patrick Murphy, who has a complicated question. I guess it's too complicated to type into the chat. Is that what I'm understanding?
Says it's about the quintile graphic. Oh, and he says yes. Okay. So let me share my screen and go back to the quintile graphic here. So Patrick, do you want to go ahead?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is my audio allowed now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. So, you know, I appreciate this graphic. It looks very nice, but I don't really get how this kickback system works. To start with, I think in the previous graphic, it said something like the net proceeds of the tax that's collected. So
Yeah.
that if it says net, that means there's a difference between net and gross.
Yes, that's correct. There's a small, administrative charge because it costs a little bit of money for the government to send checks to people, but not a whole lot because the government is really expert at sending checks to people, but it's a small amount. But to be absolutely accurate, it's in that amount.
Okay. Do you
Yeah.
have a guess on the percent? Is it like
Yes,
5%?
I think, I haven't checked the latest legislation, but the prior version, the max was 8%. And I think for the first few years, the projection showed about 6%. And after 5 years, it goes down to 2%.
That was Alvin Knott. He's another member of Citizens Climate Lobby. If you're interested, there's a study that the Treasury Department did about how much it would cost. And there are, if you're interested, Patrick, you can shoot me an email and I will find the study and send it to you.
Okay, those percentages sound totally reasonable.
Yeah.
Just wanted to, get it.
Oh, it's a great question. It's a really great question. Thank
Okay,
you.
second question about this quintile is, okay, so I would be in that second quintile where a max of $50,000. And the number you have there is $326. And yet my gas and electric for the year is about $60 a month. So let's see, what is that? That's about $720 a year. What does
Right.
that 326 mean?
That's another great question. That's the additional. That's how much your energy bill might go up or could go up.
Mhm.
So that would be your, if this, when this bill is enacted, your out of pocket would go up by 326, but your income would go up by 455. So you'd benefit.
Okay, and are
That
those
make sense?
benefits going to be paid monthly?
Yes, yeah. And as a matter of fact, the way the bill is currently written, the checks would go out actually a month or two before the taxes are collected, just to give everybody confidence that it's actually going to work. And that, those first couple of payments will be amortized over the income over the next several years, or over the next several months exactly. But the idea is that one of the things I like about this is it would be hard to game the system, because we know where the wells are, we know where the mines are, we know where the ports are, we know how much is coming into the economy. And then that money is collected from the organizations that put it into the economy, and then the money is basically turned around and distributed to everybody. So it's not as complicated as cap and trade and selling allowances and buying here and selling there, where there can be exceptions carved out for different industries. The nice thing is about this is that it percolates through the whole economy, and you don't have to make special exceptions for cars or farmers or things like that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. So, and especially the second part of your answer. So most of this money, so we're getting billed additionally and getting a kickback. But
Well,
the
you're not.
corporations are getting billed as well.
No, Patrick. Individuals are not getting billed. The only entities that are getting billed are the fossil fuel organizations that put fossil fuels into the economy. They get billed.
Well, they get a direct bill. We get this. I would end up with a $326 additional cost per year. I call that a bill.
Okay.
I get billed that amount of money.
Yeah.
So the corporations also get billed a certain amount of money. And
well, it's the same bill, Patrick, because the idea is that they wouldn't just eat that, they would pass that on to you.
Yeah.
And that's where that $326 comes from.
Okay, so people who make shirts use a certain amount of electricity.
Right.
That company's going to get billed
No, they're not going to get billed. The people who sell electricity or gas to the company that makes shirts.
Oh, okay.
So it makes it really, really simple. There's only a small, relatively small, considering the US economy and the number of businesses, it's only a small number of organizations that get billed. So if you run a shirt company or you run a restaurant, or you don't have to worry with any additional, there's no additional paperwork, there's nothing. It's
But
just really simple.
But that pass through that you just described from the energy companies will end up on the sheets of the businesses and the restaurants. Their costs will go up. And
Right.
that indirect cost, the light blue color that you've got in there.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah, exactly. You've got it. You've got it. That's it.
We've got a couple of people that have been asking questions. Can we move on to them?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Patrick. Those are great questions. Let's move on.
So way back, a while back, Brad Siegel asked, who is offering opposition to this? What is their rationale and how do we counter this?
Okay, that's a great question. Who's offering opposition to this? I guess we try to be respectful of everybody, and there's a party in Washington that basically is still not wanting to do much about climate. And so that's the opposition. What we found, what I can say is that over the years, Citizens Climate Lobby is nonpartisan, and when we go to DC, we meet with 95% of the offices. So all the most 95%, and that includes Republicans and Democrats. So, and we get, and the questioning over the years has, from the Republican side, has been, several years ago, we stopped getting the denial and we got more questions about how is it actually going to work. And we do have individually, there are many Republican offices who are interested in this. And in the previous Congress, there were Republicans in previous Congresses who were actually co-sponsors, but things have gotten really polarized. The way that I look at it is that there are enough, if there were going to be a selling point for Republicans to work on a joint or a bipartisan economic proposal, this would be something of high interest to them. And we know that, like Senator Romney, for example, has said appreciative things about a carbon price. The other thing to consider, though, is if it has to go with the reconciliation route, which some of you may be familiar with, that was a way to get a bill through Congress with just a Democratic majority. For reconciliation, the bills have to be related to taxation and money. And this bill is directly related to taxation and money, much more than any regulatory bill would be. So this bill lines up quite nicely for sliding through either as a bipartisan bill or sliding through as a bill that goes through the reconciliation process. Does that make sense? Hope that answers the question. Oh, and how can we help? Just people in DC just need to hear from us over and over and over again. Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, Chris, I'm seeing in the chat that Joe Bredden, you can certainly jump on and ask this in person, Joe, if you're present. But otherwise, I will. Great. Hi, Joe. Feel free to put on your video too if you'd like.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I thought I tried to.
Okay.
Well, it says the host has stopped it, so I guess that's not working.
Let's see if we can
Okay.
help with that.
Okay, anyway, no. So good pitch. I like the presentation. There were a few things on there that I didn't realize about. My one question was, some time ago, and this was a while ago, I think it was Clean Energy Action. I think Zane did an analysis that, went through the different options for carbon pricing and said that if you do it with a fee or tax, which I do think is the simpler way to go, that the fee would have to be so big to create enough of a price signal to change enough behavior that it wouldn't really be feasible. Obviously, your graph showed, no, the way we've got it framed, it would, it would be a pretty good trajectory. So I was just wondering if things changed since then, or you think that analysis wasn't quite right?
That's a great question, Joe. And there are a couple of pieces to the answer. One is a huge carbon fee right off the bat is politically unfeasible. And so the idea is not to shock the economy, but to give everybody in the economy a predictable trajectory, so that the businesses don't like change that much. They like to know they can make a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year plan and make investments. And so that's the idea of having this trajectory. And it starts low, but it ramps up every single year. And then the other piece of it is, let me show you, let me just share my screen again. I've got a supplemental slide here. Here's independent confirmation. This was a Columbia University study independently. Actually, it's by one of the co-authors is Noah Kaufman, who's now working for President Biden. But he and some co-authors wrote this study that showed that, and this is just a quotation, it leads to economy-wide net greenhouse gas emissions reductions of 36 to 38% by 2030. So it takes a big bite out of the problem. And then of course it keeps going beyond 2030 and keeps ramping up every year and every year. And there's actually a mechanism that if we're not meeting the goals, it will ramp up faster. And I will put this, here's the Columbia study, and I'll stop sharing and put this into the chat so people can see it.
Okay, so Zane was probably assuming that you did the fee all in one shot, and with your ramping it up, by the time we really need to get there, you do it.
Yeah. Well, of course,
Okay.
it would have been better and easier if we'd started this several years ago, but here we are. Let's see, I saw a question from David Burns. I gather my direct energy consumption of energy will represent some fraction of that 326, and all the indirect consumption of energy that the businesses I utilize will pass through their increased costs, and that will make up the other fraction. Yes, that's correct, David, that's correct, yeah. So
we got another question from earlier. I'm trying to take these in order.
Yeah.
Jim Morris, are you on? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your own question, or shall I read it?
You can read it. Well, I'll read it. Okay.
We can hear you.
Yeah, some companies and the Pentagon, I think, try to control other countries like Russia and China by limiting the access to oil. So I wonder what the effect of, are they against this or for it? And there are other major players in the financial companies such as BlackRock, Sachs, and Fidelity, and JP Morgan Chase, and the weapons companies like Lockheed, Grumman, etc. So are their interests neutral or sympathetic towards this, or do they still want to control oil so they can control other countries?
Oh, well, who's the they that you're talking about?
There are three of them. One would be weapons companies that make a good living by invading other countries or making weapons. Another is the major financial players in our culture. That's BlackRock, JP Morgan Chase, Fidelity, etc., Sachs. And then the Pentagon itself and the people who try to plan so that Iraq or China or Russia isn't dominating energy markets.
Well, that's a complicated question. I'd say I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any position that any of the weapons companies have taken on this. I know the military has been quite progressive in wanting to cut down their fuel consumption because it's the fang to tail ratio that they want to have all their energy in the fangs and not in the tail that's delivering fuel to their frontline folks. And of course, we know that reducing our dependency on oil, or anyone's dependency on oil, reduces the chances of wars based on resource scarcity. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
So there just haven't been endorsements by BlackRock or JP Morgan Chase or
no
weapons company. Okay.
No. I mean, we're working on it. One of the things we're just trying to get as many endorsements. But if you look at the members of the Silicon Valley leadership group, those are some pretty powerful companies.
Okay.
So I'd suggest you look at the Silicon Valley leadership group, and those are companies that have a lot of clout.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Chris,
Yeah.
another question was, where has a carbon fee been tried and failed? And if, assuming you're telling us about places where it failed, was that because the fees were not distributed to households as dividends?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it actually, that's a case study. It was tried and failed in Australia because the fees were not redistributed, and there was an attempt in France in the famous yellow vest protests, and again that was because the money was not going back into people's pockets. And the beauty of this is that it generates a constituency that, there was some opposition to Social Security when Social Security was first introduced, but now, nobody's going to take away your Social Security, or at least nobody's going to succeed. And some people are going to try, but nobody's going to succeed in taking away Social Security. And there was a carbon fee in the province of British Columbia that has gone for many years now, and it was capped. It didn't keep increasing, but the data show that there was a series of years after it was instituted in British Columbia where the Canadian economy on the whole was in decline, and the British Columbia economy went up. And in that case, it was not a direct dividend, but the dividend was fed back to particularly indigenous and low-income communities. So there was a lot of political support for it for those reasons.
Cool.
Great questions.
Okay, here's another one from Gabriela Martinez. And Gabriela, I see you're still here. Do you want to ask it yourself? You can unmute yourself, or I can ask it. Okay, I'll go ahead and read it. The CO2 has several sources, mainly electricity production and transportation. One way to minimize CO2 release to the atmosphere is by injecting it directly at the source. If electricity generators will inject the produced CO2, will this legislation account for that?
Yes, there is a rebate for carbon capture, but it has to be. I can look at the language if you give me a minute, but basically it's got to be verifiable and permanent, essentially. So you can't just sweep it under the rug and let it re-emerge in 5 or 10 years. So it's there's firm, strong language in the bill. That's a great question, but there is, since there is a lot of public business interest in the whole idea of carbon capture, that there is that feature in the bill. By the way, one of the links that Mary put in the chat is for, it says the original sponsor, Ted Deutsch, and there's a press release, and if you go to that press release, there's access to the text of the bill. So if you want to really dig in, the bill's only about 38, 40 pages long. So, and that's double spaced. So it's not that long a bill. And that's another thing I like about it is it's not that complicated. So it's got a high degree of transparency. Mary, maybe you could put that list of links in the chat again for people who've joined recently.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Mary's doing that. We have another question from Jacqueline Wern. Jacqueline, do you want to ask your own question, or do you also have dogs barking?
Dogs barking, but I'm happy with you asking it. And Chris touched on it earlier.
So
I'd like you to ask it, please.
Oh, okay. All right. So Jacqueline typed in, I understand that the military causes more pollution than our industry and individual use. They're excluded from the Kyoto protocols. Will they be included or allowed to continue to pollute? Oops, I just lost it. Sorry.
Do you want me to jump in, Karen?
Yeah, because I touched
Yeah.
it. There it is. Okay. Will they be included or allowed to continue to pollute much more than others of us?
okay, so here's the detail on military. The act provides a refund of carbon fee costs and covered fuels used by the military. So this would include gasoline, diesel, or other fuels used for ships, planes, and ground transport, plus coal, oil, or natural gas used to generate electricity on military bases and field operations. Based on fuel procurement reports, worldwide greenhouse gas emissions from our military amount to about 1.2% of total US emissions. So it's not very large, and about half of that occurs outside the US borders and would not be subject to the fee. The military has also been aggressively pursuing alternative sources of energy for strategic and environmental reasons. So we can expect they will take full advantage of new developments. While the military is a big emitter of greenhouse gases, they are responsible for roughly only 1% of US emissions. For strategic and environmental reasons, the military has already been active to reduce fuel use. So that's why there's a military rebate in the bill, but it's only about 1%. Great question.
Thank you.
And Donna George has had her hand up. Donna, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, yeah, thanks. Yeah, can you please put up that quintile graph again?
Sure, glad to do that.
That one, I guess.
Share screen. Here we go.
There it is.
There we go. Can you
Okay.
see that okay?
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, so I guess the blue line is just basically what electricity or whatever energy cost we use in our home, right?
Exactly. Yeah, energy and gas for your car and things like that.
Okay, and then up to the gray and the blue is how much more money we would pay in our energy cost because we're using a certain amount of carbon, or a certain amount of carbon is being used by the companies that we're getting the carbon from. Is that right?
Well, the things that you're getting products from. So
Okay.
the lower blue, but this blue bar is your electricity, heating, fossil gas for heating, and gas for your car.
Okay.
This bar is, you know, say you buy some new stuff, you know, groceries or windows or a frying pan or a new dress or a pair of shoes or something. Each of those manufacturers uses a little bit of electricity in the process of making that. So their costs are going to go up a little bit, and they may pass some of that cost on to you. And so that's what this light blue bar is.
So it's kind of consumption cost.
Consumption, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the gray bar is that if you say you have own a share of stock in General Mills, for example, okay? So, and you own a little stock in General Mills, and General Mills needs to pay a little bit more for the electricity they use to make cereal. And so they may raise the price of their cereal by a penny or two. But, well, no, wait a minute, I lost. This is the price of the cereal.
Okay.
But General Mills may reduce their dividend, stock dividend to you by a little bit, or their profits may go down a little bit and their stock may go down a little bit because of that. And that's this little gray bar.
Okay, so that's not added onto your electric bill. That's just costs generally.
Cost generally. Yeah.
Okay.
This is your new out of pocket, say you're in quintile 2, this is your new out of pocket, and this is your new income. So you're getting more back on a monthly basis. Well, this is actually this is a year's worth of cost. So in a year, you're getting this much more back, but you get it month by month. And in the month, this is you're spending this much more.
Okay, so why is it that those in the lower income bracket are getting more back than those in, it just goes by if you, the lower income brackets are just getting more money back than the higher income?
Well,
brackets?
it's this is after taxes. So
oh, okay.
See, so people in this bracket pay more in taxes.
Well,
okay.
The reason is that richer people have bigger carbon footprints in general.
Okay.
That poor people, even though they have to spend most of their money, they just don't have enough money to take a lot of trips, have big homes, big cars, SUVs. And rich people, if they just, to the extent they have control over it, can use solar power, not fly, etc. But in fact, and so it's not a soak the rich scheme, but in general, rich people, everybody gets back the same dividend, but rich people spend more on carbon intensive products.
Yeah.
Okay. So that makes more, because I thought it was more on your electricity, and that was was going to be my question, is like, sometimes if you're in the higher income bracket, you can spend money on solar panels and you would use a lot less, carbon intensive stuff. And sometimes if you're in a lower income bracket, you might live in a house that has some old furnace that, you can't replace. So it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with kind of the economy in general.
Right. It has nothing everybody gets the same amount, rich or poor. Bill
Okay.
Gates gets the same monthly check that you and I do.
Okay,
That
that makes more sense. Yeah.
But you and I, don't have a private jet, and you and I don't have a mansion. And so, and also you and I probably pay, well, Bill Gates has fancy tax people, but for the most part, you and I pay lower taxes than people in the upper income brackets.
Okay. Okay, it makes sense. Thank you. Because yeah, it makes a lot more sense now. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great question. One way to think about it is this rewards the carbon virtuous. If you don't use a lot of carbon, then you get to keep more of the money.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question about that?
Well, let's see, Jim, you've asked a question. Let's see, is there anybody else in the queue?
Yeah, so Paul Colden asked, Chris, will there be a market in carbon sequestration if sequestration becomes cheaper than the carbon fee? And then he has a follow-up question, which is also, is methane covered by the fee? And if so, at what rate?
Methane was covered, I think, by a bill that passed by the, methane had been in a previous version of the bill, but there was some dealing with methane in the rescue plan, I think. And then in terms of the carbon capture and storage, let me just find the details on that, and I can stop sharing my screen. These are all wonderful questions.
If I can just add on methane, it will be captured to the extent you burn methane, but to the extent there are leaks, that's got to be covered by regs because we don't know what percentage of methane leaks.
Yeah, but if you're, methane is, fossil gas. So if you're burning fossil gas, it will be covered. Let's see.
Yeah, so Chris, this is Paul. What I was getting at was if I came up with a reasonably inexpensive way to do carbon capture, could I then sell my services to other companies that were using carbon to reduce their fee?
The answer is yes.
So it gives a refund to companies that collect and sequester CO2. And here's the language I was looking for before. If it's sequestered in a manner that is, quote, safe, permanent, and in compliance with any applicable local, state, and federal laws, as determined by consultation with the EPA. And the EPA can also cover for or gauge if there's going to be any leakage, because we want to make sure that there's no leakage. It doesn't subsidize or fund research into carbon capture and storage, but simply allows private companies to determine for themselves if they judge the carbon price to be sufficient to justify investing in carbon capture and storage. So the way I read that is that if you've got a company and you've figured out a great way to capture and store carbon, you could probably make money by taking other people's carbon and storing it. But I'm not sure about the details of that, but that's how I would read that.
Whoops. Another question from Weston Wilson. Weston, are you still on? It's kind of nice to have people ask their own questions if they're still here.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. You want to turn on your video too?
Yeah, I heard that. Well, no, I got too many dogs. I heard that answer about methane. It doesn't cover the leaks, but it covers when it's burned.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a big gap. But
Yeah.
does it apply to other greenhouse gases in any way?
That's yeah.
At least I haven't read the latest. The prior version covered 6 stated ones in anything the EPA says. So it covers like nitrous oxide, some of the sulfur oxides are included within the definition of greenhouse gases.
Then we have a follow-up then. At their global warming potential compared to CO2?
Yeah, exactly, the sort of carbon equivalent.
Yeah, the CO2 equivalent.
Yes.
What would it take to make an amendment that included methane leak?
Well, you should ask your get your representative to support it, and then we'll, the sausage making process is going to be what it is. But I'd encourage you, if you want to, just get the copy of the bill is as I said, it's only about 35 pages long. So, but these are great questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Oh, I see. Actually, I see where this is an Empower Hour. And if we're going to be true to our advertisement, we should probably wrap it up pretty soon. I'd be willing to stick around if people have other questions. But I just want to thank everybody for being here, and thank you for your great questions, and hope this has gotten you excited about one of the, it's not a silver bullet, but it's a big piece of the silver buckshot to solve this problem that we're all facing. So thank you very, very much. And I'm happy to stick around if people have some other questions for a few minutes.
Thank you, Chris. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Awesome, Chris. So there are some questions from people who have already asked questions prior to this. All right, so Patrick Murphy's had a couple of other questions. Patrick, are you still on? Do you want to ask? You've got one you've asked a couple of times.
Yeah, it's a hard question. Don't you think the Senate is just going to shut this down? And at best, we're going to be trying to do this again, maybe as soon as 2022?
Well, I don't know. Your guess about the Senate is as good as mine. What I can say is that having been a citizen lobbyist for now several years, what I've found is that these things, they always take time. We've been working, Citizens Climate Lobby has been working at this for years, and each time we get a few more people interested and a few more people willing to listen and a few more people open to decisions. So, and the bill, the other thing is that what I've learned about this process is the bill, when a bill is introduced, it needs to be assigned to committees, and the committees get to kind of work it over. And the more experience that the bill committees have with working things over, the faster it will go the next time. And the other piece is that this bill is written so that it really is only needing to go to 3 committees in the House: Ways and Means, Foreign Affairs, and one other, which I'm not thinking about right now. But anyway, is a limited number of committees. They're called committees of jurisdiction, and we have co-sponsors of this bill on each of those committees. So that bodes well too, that there are people who are co-sponsoring this bill who are also sitting on the committees who are going to look it over. But again, it takes time, and this looks like the most promising legislation because it will get to work really quickly. You know, it will start to work the year it's introduced, and we don't have to spend a lot of time. If with regulation, first you have to write the regulation, which involves hearings and public comments. And then once the regulation is written, then it's subject to court challenges. So it can take years to get to get a regulation to take effect. So that's one of the reasons that we like this more direct approach.
So I don't see any more questions. I do see a comment from Joe Bredden who, Joe, do you want to make your comment in person?
Sure. I don't think it needs a response. I was just responding to the people who were asking about methane. And I do think, you know, that'd be great if you could catch that, because methane's so much more potent. But I imagine the big hurdle would be, you know, that we're not measuring it consistently. So
yeah, that is a big hurdle. And then it opens that whole can of worms about measurement, and then it keeps the bill from moving forward. And what we want is we want to get this enacted soon so it can start making a difference soon.
Right, and I really like that part of your pitch was that, you know, that it's relatively straightforward and it doesn't go through all those hoops that you just described with regs, and that's pretty compelling.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm going to say thank you now for everybody's attention, and appreciate your interest. And please check out the websites and all the resources that have been put into the chat. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.